The scherzo has homophonic texture. The trio has an imitative polyphonic texture. So you have a contrast of key, of texture. Of course, you have a new theme, so contrasting themes. But you also have a contrast in orchestration, in that the trio section features a reduction in the number of players. So the trio section begins presenting this new theme that's going to be layered in this polyphonic texture, presents it in the lower strings, and then you have these successive entrances of that same theme in higher pitch levels. So be able to compare that idea of contrast between the scherzo and the trio section. You should, in general, be able to just talk about Beethoven's 3 style periods and what are some general characteristics of each. So the first is more classical, and the second was more romantic, and then the third was much more personal and much more intense and emotional way. So the Fifth Symphony, you should be able to talk about the fate motive, the concept of cyclic construction, you should know that term. So the fate motive was the term that was applied to the first 4 notes of the symphony. That's the main theme that's developed in the first movement. And it returns in the scherzo section of the 3rd movement, as well as coming back in the 4th movement. The rhythm of the B theme is based on the fate motive. And at the end of the development, when you're expecting then the recap, then Beethoven stops the motion and brings back the version that you heard in the 3rd movement that was the written out da capo of the fate motive. And so you should be able to describe where does that fate motive come back in the examples that we did. Beethoven elides the 3rd and 4th movement together, so there's that breakdown of having separate movements, but it's just one idea leading to the next. That becomes a romantic quality. We'll see with tone poems. So just look for romantic qualities in Beethoven's music. The artist is hero, the idea of catharsis, and you should be able to talk about classical and romantic characteristics of his music. All right, with Berlioz, then you want to be able to talk about some things with his contribution. So one of the things that was really important was his orchestration technique. So he wrote a book on orchestration. That was very influential. And it's his program symphonies, his Requiem, which are his most famous works. So the Symphonie Fantastique, you should know the program of that symphony. So be sure you can just give a description of each movement. You should be able to talk about autobiographical elements in it. So you should know who Harriet Smithson is, for instance. You should know the term fixed idea. You should know the term dies irae. You should be able to describe some of the unique, colorful orchestration elements that he uses. So your harp, second movement. You see things like sponge-covered drumsticks for percussionists. The example we just heard had the colenio, the tapping with the stick of the bow. And then with Brahms, you should be able to describe classical and romantic characteristics of Brahms' music. So you've got that in your notes. And I could ask you just, terms like, if I had the Neue Zeitschrift for music, what does that have to do with? Do you remember that?
It's the music magazine that Schumann started publishing.
That's right. So that's the music magazine that Schumann founded, and that he then submitted an article that described, he called the Lone Eagle, in the essay entitled New Paths, predicting Brahms to write the next great German symphony that would follow Beethoven. So, with each of these composers, you could talk about, the genres that were really successful. So I mentioned opera and concerto for Mozart. With Haydn, he's known as the father of the symphony. So the symphony and the string quartet with Haydn. With Beethoven, symphonies, string quartets, solo piano literature. With Berlioz's programmatic symphonies. And with Brahms, it's the same as Beethoven. So symphonies, chamber music, solo piano music, but then add art song, lieder, German songs. So do you have any questions about any of the terms that are on your review sheet? Maybe the one term, I'm not sure how much I said about tonal architecture, but that just is a basic concept having to do with this organizing a form according to a harmonic progression, harmonic formula. So having certain keys that you expect the music to go to that organizes the form. So this is something that's a basic principle that arose at the beginning of the Baroque period, which has to do with the tonality, the tertian harmonic system that is present in the common practice period. So this just has to do with basing. So basing the form on a harmonic formula or plan. So be able to talk a little bit about this era, the common practice period. I could ask you something about Rameau's treatise on harmony. What was that great work? And obviously the dates of the common practice period, you need to know that. And what is it about the common practice period that composers had in common? Why is it called the common practice period? Okay, so any questions? You can bring some more questions on Thursday, because we'll have time to talk a little bit more about it on Thursday. But start studying right away and just pulling things together. On Thursday, we'll start the section on the concerto, which of course won't be on this next test. So today was the last lecture on this section on symphony. All right, so we'll see you on Thursday.